All right, members, we've got 4 more members wishing to ask this panel questions. I would ask you to be...
I've got 4 as well.
So we have 8. Here's what we're going to do. I want you to be succinct, direct, not ask leading questions. If you ask a question, can you use more money? We already know what that answer is. So let's move through that with a little bit more objective. If you're fishing, that's okay, but let's kind of pull that into rather out just leading open questions. Secondly, we're going to do something that most committees will not do. And it's not that the invited are not an important part of this process. You're instrumental in where we're going to land based on where you're at. We are going to start interfacing or integrating public testimony after this panel. So what you should see is this panel will finish with the members. We will ask 8 public, and we just ask another 8 public. So we're going to have 16 public and come back to invited. And that way, the folks that we really think want to speak aren't here till 12 o'clock. So we'll roll through that. But I'm not asking members not to ask questions. I'm just saying let's be a little bit succinct with the mission. I know what questions I've got, and I know where I'm going with them, and they really require pretty much yes and no answers. So try to line it up that way if you can. With that, Senator Mendez.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Is this thing working?
Got to turn the mic on.
The green light's on, Mr. Chairman.
I don't have.
Can you hear me? Yeah, thank
Yes.
you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, I want to, first of all, let me thank the panel. Particularly, I want to thank the gentleman who answered some tough questions. You know, your whereabouts were asked a lot about, and I appreciate you. I'm not even asking you to respond. I'm just saying thank you for giving us the. I hope you feel better, and I understand you. You know, we all get sick. Things happen. It's important. I think one of the things that was very important too that I appreciated from just about everybody on the panel was the copy of their remarks. So I'd like to ask Mr. Rice, Dr. Rector, and Judge
Can't say it. Stolarczyk.
Stolarczyk. Judge Stolarczyk, if you would provide us a copy of your remarks as well, please. Look, one of the things that we're going to rely on, we're here today. We're glad to hear you, glad to see you. We thank you for the incredibly difficult work you've been doing. But we're also here to hear from the community, and we want to hear from them because we know that they've suffered through so much. And so that's all I have. I want to get your remarks in writing. I'm going to read everything. I'm going to go through it because we're looking for ways that we can improve and we can mitigate this type of tragedy from ever happening again. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair recognizes Representative Martinez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, I'm going to ask our sheriff just a quick question. And my ears perked up a little bit when we spoke about interoperability and the Rio Grande Valley and how I've responded to many of the calls down there, and we switched to all Valley. And in essence, not wanting to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, right? And the amount of money and the cost it would take for a full new complete system throughout the state of Texas. But in listening to Colonel Freeman's testimony, he had mentioned last week that they do have SIM cards that can be placed in these radios to where there would be interoperability across the state of Texas when one agency, for example, I know I saw one of our ambulances from Weslaco that's here through EMTF, right, and they've responded to in support. But how would that work? Is that available? We understand that those systems are maybe $12,000 per radio, but is that an option that can be utilized with every department throughout the state of Texas without reinventing that wheel of infrastructure?
Oh, absolutely, sir. The main problem is the purchase of that equipment, but yes, it is available.
Okay, thank you very much. And then one last question, and this could be for anyone on the panel, and it's mainly, you know, in looking at the map, when you look at the South Fork of the Guadalupe and where it intersects with Cypress Creek, is there any way, or is there something that we could put in place, maybe gauges on those creeks as well, that could help us maybe model that, collect data to where we could understand, you know, those rise and falls of those the creeks as well in that intersection to help us with warning systems?
So Bill Rector, Bill Rector, UGRA. Yes, sir. That's something that we are looking at. Also, floods don't just occur on the North and South Fork and the Johnson Creek. We've had significant floods on other creeks, Turtle Creek, Cypress Creek, and those need to be monitored also, and we're planning to do that.
Thank you.
Senator Bettencourt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, to the judge and to the mayor, 108 plus people could have lost their lives here. The whole nation grieves with you. That's why you have a tremendous heartstrings now from just not in Texas, not from all our districts, but all across the nation. I wanted to start with Judge Rubio real fast. You mentioned in your testimony that you were worried if we had a, and we're calling it a flood emergency communications and warning system, that we would not have funding for that, for maintenance and operation. I want to make sure you know that Lieutenant Governor Patrick, Speaker Burrows, Governor Abbott have all said that the state's going to pay for it, and we're looking at ways to make sure you have that maintenance and operation money long term.
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Rector, you mentioned something that I need to ask further questions about. You said you weren't really sure about a river alert system actually being able to save lives, and you mentioned that the wall of water was moving at 17 miles per hour.
Yes, sir.
Right? Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's
And
correct.
you said the camps were 7 miles downstream. Now, by my simple Aggie math calculation, that's 24 minutes. Now, if we had an integrated system, and your organization was looking at one, I think it was 10 river crossings, if I remember from the engineering study I read. But if we had an integrated gauge system with an alert that was also tied electronically downstream, we could be popping sirens off as we go. And 24 minutes is enough to get people to higher ground, because that's all you can do here. You don't want to put them into a river crossing. You want to get them to a higher ground.
Yes.
So with that fact and the fact that there's 24 minutes, you want to change your response on if you think a river alert system could have helped save lives?
Bill Rector, UGRA. Yes, sir, Senator. There's no question that that could have saved lives.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we established that. Mr. Wright, you had a lot of testimony. I first off want to say that the statistics are that we know Texans turn off their alerts about 29.5% of the time. That's 5 times more than Vermonters. Also, we got a problem with people turning phones off at night, about 18%. You combine that, you're already in the 40 percentile of people that are not going to be able to get this, and that's not counting the unique topography of the hill country and the Guadalupe River, of which I've been here for more years than I can remember. Now, we agree that this should be like the mayor. We want a data system that's that's minute by minute and can respond. But in your written testimony, we asked about sirens and whether siren alert system could have helped us respond more effectively or even save lives. And you said it wasn't an easy question to answer with certainty. It's something we've evaluated in the past, and I just want to make sure you made a comment about visitors not understanding what the sirens mean, and that's because we're going to probably pass these bills and get these systems out, and I think it's incumbent that, and we understand the high walls. I mean, I've rafted this area. We've got 50 to 100-foot cliffs areas, but shouldn't we be more concerned about getting that siren into people's auditory range so they can take action and get to higher ground?
William Thomas, Kirk County. Yes, sir. What I was referring to is we need the education piece. We need something on our websites, social media, those types of places where the public can go to and see what those sirens actually mean.
But you're not saying that we shouldn't do this because the public won't understand what it
Oh,
means?
no, sir, at all.
Okay.
I think we definitely need it.
No, I just wanted to make sure that wasn't part of the record because that's the way it reads. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And Sheriff, understand the points we've already covered. There was one thing that you said that we do have to visit. You said there was no time for formal orders. I need to know what that means. I think the public needs to know what that means.
Exactly. When I say formal orders, you talk about an incident command or something like that. At that particular time, it was time to save lives and go to work. You know what I mean? We'll set up, as administration, we'll set that up. When I say it's time to take action, I mean, it was real time. Things are happening right there at that time.
Because we agree about the river crossings and the other statements about getting people on higher ground. Now, if there was an emergency alert system, okay, you're not saying by this testimony that you wouldn't have hit the button because the emergency management coordinator works for both you and the judge.
Yes.
But because when you say there's no time for formal orders, that could be misinterpreted as I didn't have time to do code red. I shouldn't have done a code red. So I want to give you the chance to make sure you specify exactly what occurred. Now, before you do, OEM or Director Nidden Kidd said that in testimony that no alert was issued by Kerr County on evacuations. So,
Okay, what I'm saying on my comment is it's not kind of, let's call the administrator or supervisor and ask what to do. I mean, it's time to take action at that time. That's what I'm trying to say, sir.
okay, so if we had an alert system, now, and I do want to ask you and the judge, because the Director, Kidd was, said that there was not an evacuation order issued by Kerr County at any time. Now, is that just oversight, didn't have the system? What was the issue, why that evacuation order wasn't issued?
It was too late. It was too late.
Okay.
This was so massive and arrived so quickly that if you've driven that road, you know, and you've been to the camps, we're talking about thousands of campers. And then we have the residents. And trying to move down Highway 39, which is 2-lane with no right-of-ways. And it's 2 lanes with no right-of-ways because it's privately owned, but it's a public use road. And the number of buses that bring the campers out sometimes are bumper to bumper and go on for half a day. Those of you that have seen it know what I'm talking about. To try to get those people out of, and you got to remember the configuration. You've got the North Fork and the South Fork, and then they get to La Junta. Mm-hmm. We're going to have one heck of a traffic jam at La Junta.
And
closer. Okay.
And Judge,
closer.
in the interest of time, could the cubic flow on the river
Yes, sir.
was 2.5 times the average flow over Niagara Falls.
Absolutely.
Which is an astonishing number. And I think in 1987, I'm going from memory, I think 10 people lost their lives because we tried to evacuate people across the river.
Children in the school bus.
Right. So no one would suggest that. Okay. The concept I'm trying to get to is this. The watches were in place till about 1:06. 1:14, the mayor, everyone said that it turns into a warning. And by 4:23 a.m., it's the highest level the Weather Service can get, which is a emergency alert. So at that point in time, would there not have been a recognition of the obvious that there needs to be an alert that says effectively get to higher ground?
I agree.
Okay. Thank you for your response.
Chair recognizes Chairman Moody.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be succinct and to the point. I just have a couple follow-ups for some folks. But before I say that, just to y'all here and to the folks that have been through this tragedy, in just a few days, the community I come from, El Paso, is going to recognize an anniversary that we don't like to think about. But during that time, as the mayor stated, we also saw the strength of our community, and we saw the love and care and compassion from people we'll never meet that wrapped our community in love and lifted us up. And I want you all to know that's certainly what we're all here to do, but there's people that are going to do that for you for years to come, and we're going to be walking with you side by side. So I had to say that before I start. A couple of questions. Sheriff, in the follow-up question that Sheriff Lauterbach asked, you went through a detailed timeline I don't have that in your written testimony provided. Is that something you could please provide to the committee subsequent to the hearing?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that. Let me switch over to Mr. Rice. Mr. Rice, you listed a number of legislative proposals, ideas, concepts. Obviously, we're time constrained in a 30-day session, but I think some of those things fit in that bucket. And some of these things, I know I've visited with Speaker Burrows about this. These are going to, and I imagine the Senate will do this, launch forward into the 2027 session, ideas going forward, right? There's immediate need, and then there's structural change that we need to get to. And those are two things that we need to do. We can start in earnest on them. I didn't see that list provided here either. Is that something you can provide to us if it hasn't been provided already?
Dalton Rice, City Manager. Yes, sir. We can provide any documentation you need.
Okay, and if you wouldn't mind segregating, like put it in those two columns, so it'd be helpful to us. Because
Yes,
I
sir.
do think also you did mention in your testimony, property tax relief legislation. That's something that's going to be considered. I'd like to know, from your all's perspective, how emergency preparation, mitigation, all of those things that our locals are tasked with doing, how that sits side by side in setting your budgets, because y'all are in budgets
Yes,
right
sir.
now. You're launching into budgets right now. And I think that needs to be a part of that conversation. Even though it's a separate conversation, it certainly is connected to your ability to do what you need to do for your community.
Yes, sir.
So if you could please highlight that, that would be helpful to us.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm going to try my best. Judge Stolarczyk, was that close?
You got it, sir. That was actually correct.
Judge, thank you very much for your testimony. I think specifically your testimony about your preparation and the work you've been doing, I think it's very instructive to folks to hear those stories. You mentioned that your emergency management coordinator, last name I caught was Constantine. What was the first name?
Shane Stolarczyk, Kendall County. Brady Constantine.
And is Brady Constantine here?
Yes, sir, and he did fill out a form in case you'd like to hear from him.
Okay, great. I would. Because there's something that's sticking in my mind here, and we're talking about, warnings versus watches versus emergencies. And we know that warnings start sometime on the 3rd, carry forward, and escalate up. What actions are taken, those are, and to the sheriff's point, those are things that you're doing as the situation unfolds. But there's two very different things that I heard. One, that I think in the sheriff's written testimony, that he went to bed on the 3rd and didn't have anything to worry him as he went to bed that night. And you said that Brady Constantine's reaction in your testimony was he had an uneasy feeling that night. I'm not saying either one is right or wrong, so I'm not here to criticize. What I'm saying is all the same data was available to both those people, and you have two very different reactions. And again, this is not for me to say right, wrong, because there may be a reason why you get a number of warnings, and because of your experience, you go, okay, well, that's this or that's this, and maybe it was, things move a lot.
There is a reason, sir.
Okay.
Would you like me to call him up right now?
If we get to his testimony later, I'm happy to hear it. I do want to dig into that because it may be that those warning systems and how they ratchet up isn't effective for you all to be able to do what you need to do in a uniform fashion. And what's happening in Kendall County versus Kerr County, I know you all are nearby, but could be different issues.
In a nutshell, I believe it's based on Brady's interactions with our TDM representatives, and the conversations they had personally with him is what triggered his uneasiness. And plus, we also had a huge parade the next day in Comfort, which draws people from all over the state. And so I think the combination of those two things added to Brady's feelings that day.
Okay, that's good. And when Mr. Constantine testifies, I'd like to hear more about that at that time. That would be very enlightening for us, because those types of communications, we heard from TDEM last week about those conversations, and I think we need to figure out how we can be, this is for all of us to look at what we can do better and how we can react better. And if the systems aren't set up to give us a uniform reaction when even catastrophic things are happening, then we need to look at those too. This is the opportunity for us to unpack those. Just because we've done something the same way for years doesn't mean we don't look at it again now. You also mentioned in your testimony that you wanted to simplify grant applications. You highlighted engineering studies that have to be provided as some of those grant applications. Can you highlight which grants you're talking about?
I also have my county engineer here, because I believe there was one application we went out for. We had to actually do an engineering study as part of the application process, and that costs funds. I don't recall the name of it, but it's things like that could be cost prohibitive for certain counties, because you're spending that money with no guarantee that you're going to receive the funding at the backside.
And your county engineer's name?
Mary Ellen Schuley. She also filled out a card, so
we'll hear from her later.
Yeah, if you'd like them in the 3-minute comments, they can come up. I don't know what the process is for them.
I do want to hear that, because part of the task that we've been given is to get rid of the red tape.
Okay.
It is not a system that anybody wants. When you are trying to figure out how to mitigate harm or how to recover from a disaster, if we are asking people to check boxes that are not necessary, that is the epitome of bureaucratic nonsense. And you highlighted it here. I'd like to drill down into, and I've talked to the Texas Water Development Board as well already at the last hearing, to identify these things when we're talking. Now, I'm not saying that you still got to check, you're spending money, right? You want to make sure that we're not doing that in a wasteful manner. But if we're talking about emergency preparedness and recovery from disasters, I want to know where the red tape is, because we need to figure out how to get rid of it so that you can do the job that you need to do, so the judges can do that, so the sheriff can do that, so that we can get the funding to people. We have great capacity in the state of Texas, great capacity. But if we tie it up with timelines and useless check boxes, then we are depriving the people that we represent from solutions that they know could help and could save lives.
Agreed, and it's just not at the state level, it's at the federal level as well, because we went out for grant applications for wildfire protection, and we're like the 26th county in all of Texas to have a wildfire protection plan. We went out for a grant. It was given great remarks by the federal government. We were excluded because we were too wealthy of a county, so they put financial parameters on health and safety. Even though we were well deserving of it based on our needs and our wildfire dangers, we were denied based on so you're not alone in having those issues. So.
And Judge, I agree with you, and we talked about this at the last hearing. I get why that's something they look at, I think, median household income, and that's how with the grant application, it was 5%. Right, they did dump it into a formula, and that's the way we divide it up. There is a great philosophical reason for doing that, right? Communities that can't afford it, you want to triage that and put them front of line. I don't disagree with that. That's something that makes sense. But this is also an opportunity for us to look at. I mean, disaster is going to hit people that no matter what their median household income is. So what can we do to unlock the potential of the state? And if there are messages we can send to the feds, we need to do that as well. And so if you can help us identify, or any other witnesses that are listening, help us identify those barriers when you're talking about mitigation and emergency recovery, let us know what those are. And we are talking to these agencies because we need to get that stuff out of the way. That's part of the task that we have here. You shouldn't be put in a decision, you shouldn't be put in the position to make those decisions when you're talking about saving lives. As you're setting budgets, I think we need to figure out how we unlock the potential of the state, and if we can highlight those concerns to the feds, we're going to do that too. But we certainly can control what we do at the state level, and some of that is money that flows down from the feds as well.
And we're a very blessed community, and so we didn't take that. We didn't just stop there. We didn't get it. We actually found a way to fund it internally and start a 501c3, and the county funded that 501c3 with the funds to carry out our plan. So where there's a will, there's a way, but it'd be so much nicer to not have that red tape. So I appreciate your comments and your support on this matter.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Swartner.
If you
direct questions to a number of the individuals on the panel here. Judge Kelly, I think some constituents and individuals, families of the tragic children that were lost, want to know some very direct answers to some questions I'm going to ask. And I'm going to ask them for those individuals. First, Judge, are there any sirens in Kerr County along the river regarding emergency warning?
Not that I know of, but I'll defer to my emergency management coordinator.
William Thomas, Kerr County. No, sir, there are no warnings.
Right.
No sirens.
Guadalupe County has like 23 along their section of the GBRA, and I know there are several in Comfort based after disaster that have been installed recently. Judge, you put down in your written testimony that the first indication in this storm was different came from when I woke up to texts and calls from Kidd, Letha, and Rice. Were you awoken or did you wake up from those texts and calls? And at what time did you wake up?
It's going to be in the 5:30, 6 range, something like that. And I don't remember if they woke me up or I woke up.
You don't remember?
No, I remember looking at my phone.
Okay.
That's what I did.
And you were at the lake? I'm sorry, which lake was that?
Travis?
Travis Lake, okay. You are the emergency management director for the county, correct? With Mr. Thomas being the emergency management coordinator?
Yes.
All right. And Mr. Thomas, you mentioned in your written testimony that you were sick and were awoken by your wife after a call from the city of Kerrville's EMC, which is your counterpart for the city of Kerrville. Is that correct?
William Thomas, Kerr County. Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. So between the two of y'all are in charge of the emergency management operations for the county of Kerr County. When was an EOC established for Kerr County?
The EOC was set up in my absence.
By who?
I don't really know. Okay. I'm assuming. I think Chief Kidd had gotten here by then.
Yeah, there was a combined one set up later that day, I think,
right,
about 6 p.m.
Moved it, yeah.
But as far as an EOC, there was one in Kerrville, the city. But Kerr County set up an EOC or not? I don't know.
No, the way I understand it is the county actually set up their EOC in the Youth Event Center, which is a county-owned building. It had been moved to that location. What happened out in Ingram at City West Church was an incident command center, as I understood it. Dub, can you clarify?
Yes, sir. William Thomas, Kerr County. So we operate a joint EOC. We have a joint emergency management plan, Kerrville, Kerr County, City of Ingram. So we had a joint EOC set up.
You had a joint EOC set up, not dissimilar to Kendall County and Bernie when they have an emergency situation.
That's correct.
Okay. Sheriff Letha, did I say your name correctly? I'm sorry if I did not.
Yes, sir, you did.
Yes. You gave the timeline, and that was very good information. It looks like the 3 o'clock hour was, for lack of better terms, when the SHIT hit the fan.
That's when 3:30. Yes.
You said in your testimony that when Shoemaker passing or crossing became flooded, it raised some eyebrows in the dispatch center in the KCSO, the Kerr County Sheriff's Office Dispatch Center, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned there were a large number of calls and then 114 radio transmissions in the next kind of time frame, 119 or whatever. So a lot of activity. You mentioned that several times. Was there any activity to call you? Because in your written testimony, there's no, like when you were awake or whenever you were around. So when was that? So
okay, I got my first call at 4:20 is when I came, I'd say, active. My chief deputy contacted me at that time. I had 2 phones going, turned the radio on. I kind of lived to the east part of the county. It's a little bit dry, but I came to the sheriff's office by around 5 a.m. But no, I was notified at 4:20.
Okay. So you were notified, of course, because, sheriffs and 911 dispatch, they're awake and alert, and someone's answering the phone. So that's good. Did you notify the sheriff, the judge, or the EMC?
Yeah, well, at that time, what I did, I started calling people out. A little bit later, I did contact the judge. I knew my communication supervisor was trying to get a hold of our EMC. But I started calling people out. And what I did immediately, when I knew what was going on, I started calling hands on deck, getting people out in the field. That was my primary, felt like my responsibility.
So it was more focused on rescue and handling the acute situations coming into the 911 call center.
Yes, sir. I was not, to me, it wasn't important to notify the judge at that time. We needed to save lives.
And there's a way to alert the mass through their phones, but there's not a siren system in Kerr County regarding an emergency event, correct?
Yes, sir. There's not.
And you don't have the authority to actually activate that, do you, as a sheriff?
Well, we don't have that alarm system, sir.
Right, but if there was an alarm system, the sheriff doesn't have that authority. It has to be the judge or the mayor.
Sorry, I can't answer that question.
You don't
sir.
know the answer
No,
to that?
I don't.
Or can you answer that question, Mr. Thomas?
William Thomas, Kerr County. If we get a flood warning system here with sirens, it will be, the sheriff will be able to activate that system.
Yeah,
He'll
again,
have the
but
authorization.
in this situation, who can activate, call an evacuation? Can you call one as EMC, or does it have to be the judge or the mayor?
Under Chapter 418 of the Government Code, I believe it's the county judge.
The county judge, okay. You're not empowered by statute to do so as EMC.
No, sir, but in a life-saving event, we can order people to leave.
Right. But you were sick in bed until that morning when you were woken from your wife.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, there's my focus was on the prevention of loss of life, not necessarily the rescues, which have their own problems, and obviously the coordinate, which I actually commend many people on this panel. It's just, and Sheriff, one other question regarding this. I believe one of the other county judges mentioned that their sheriffs had pre-stationed, and I know you have a family history here in Kerr County with an intimate knowledge of the various crossings that are the worst and the likeliest to flood early. Mm-hmm. Did you have any sheriff deputies pre-stationed at those crossings?
No, at that time, no, I didn't.
Can you turn on your mic, sir?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah,
Yes.
No, at that time, I did not have deputies. They were out in the field. As soon as we started getting phone calls, they went to those areas.
Right, but you didn't have any pre-stationed at the low water crossings that are the first to flood in Kerr County based on your knowledge and your family history in this county.
Well, no, sir, I didn't. With the prediction of 1 to 3 inches of rain, 5 to 7 in isolated areas, it was just another normal day at that time.
Okay, thank you for your answers.
Chair calls Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman. To Senator Shortner's point, and he has laid this out pretty clearly, but clearly the question would be not to be critical, but to learn from this incident. The 3 guys in Kerr County who were responsible for sounding the alarm were effectively unavailable. Am I hearing that right?
What alarm are you talking about, ma'am?
Well, you said at 3:30, after 3:27, when what's the crossing called?
Schumacher Crossing?
When Schumacher Crossing's not possible, and at 3:30, when there's a call coming in that people are on their roof, you wrote down that's time for all hands on deck.
Correct.
But you didn't wake up till 4:20. The judge is in Lake Travis, and the emergency manager is sick.
Correct, ma'am. At that time, my people were out there doing the job. I got the call at 4:20, but they were doing their job, notifying people and rescuing people.
But you, to your point, this was a weather event nobody had ever seen. It was moving fast, and 50 minutes sure seems like a lot.
Yes, ma'am.
So if we could do it better, because we cannot go back in time and save these children, but knowing now what you know, is there a protocol that needs to be put in place that if the 3 folks who are responsible at this moment are not available for whatever reason, what should we do?
Yes, ma'am. We can look at that real hard. You know what I mean? Well, best thing I can tell you, I got the call at 4:20. Prior to the 4:20, that 50 minutes earlier than that, our people were out there. Our dispatch was calling additional people out. Yes, I can look at maybe they could call me earlier.
But no code red was issued, correct?
No, there was a code red issued, I believe it, to look about 5:01. But there was additional weather alerts being put out that whole time.
But who issues the code red?
Our dispatch issues it.
Under whose authority?
Anyone who tells them that they have supervisor approval.
And who is the supervisor?
The supervisor on that night was Sergeant Merritt.
So are you saying that there was a code red that was issued at 4:22?
No, that's when it was requested,
When was it issued?
5:01. Let me explain that to y'all up here. What happened at that time, I gave you the numbers. These people, they were overwhelmed, okay? These dispatchers were with phone calls, radio transmissions, trying to type. They did a great job. The code red went out at 5:01. But in addition to that, there was other life-saving measures that were going on.
I was down here last week. You have a beautiful part of Texas. You have a community that has rallied. I have seen folks from all over this nation that has come in after the fact. It is our responsibility to look at, is there ability to better predict? Is there ability for better preparedness and for better prevention? My questions are purposely intended to figure out, now that you have the gift of hindsight in 2020, because Wimberley was 2015. Allison in Houston, of a slow-moving storm that didn't move, I experienced. Harvey didn't move, I experienced. Unfortunately, y'all have now experienced something you are saying, I have never heard of or seen this before. We've experienced it in other parts of Texas. And if we can't take advantage of this moment right now for the rest of Texas to recognize, you may not think it's going to happen to you, but it's going to happen. And if we're not prepared for the extreme weather, the system that stalls, then we're not taking advantage of this moment. So the question is, you said at 3:30, when people were having to get off the roofs, that's the moment for all hands on deck. And I'm trying to figure out, is there an existing system that could have gone out to people in floodwaters way to reach higher ground, or are you missing that system?
No, we do have a code red system that something can be put out. Yes, ma'am.
But for whatever reason, in this moment, there was nobody to properly sound the alarm. Is that what I'm hearing?
They did not send the code red, no, ma'am, until 5:01.
I have numerous folks from our area that have lost family in this event. And it is my understanding that there were little girls with water around their feet at 2 a.m. at Mystic, and were told, stay in your cabin. And those little girls did what they were instructed. What, if any, system is there available for Kerr County officials to hear from campsites on the river in a flood zone to better coordinate, to send out a warning? Is there any way right now, was there a way for Mystic at 2 a.m. to tell you we have water at our ankles?
I'm going to defer to our emergency management.
William Thomas, Kerr County. Is it working? Okay. William Thomas, Kerr County. So there were a number of National Weather Service alerts that went out that evening.
I'm not asking about the national weather because that's prediction. I'm talking about the reality on the ground of little girls in their bunks with water around their feet at 2 a.m. Did you have any idea that that was happening? And was there a mechanism in place? Because if it's happening at Camp Mystic, you've got every other camp in this recreational zone at risk. What was the protocol in the process to warn people when that scenario comes up?
To my knowledge, we were not notified that the girls had water in their camp.
Did you have a protocol or a process to give you notice and or to seek assistance at that point, or was this private entity on their own?
No, I've had discussions with the camps before, and the process was they need to notify the sheriff's office.
Is there any indication that there was any notification?
I'd have to defer that to the sheriff.
No, ma'am, I don't have any. No, ma'am, I don't have any notifications. in my notes.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week, we heard testimony from Chief Nim Kidd from the Texas Department of Emergency Management about hazard mitigation plans. My question is to Mr. Thomas. According to TDEM, counties are required to submit hazard mitigation plans to TDEM, and then TDEM is supposed to provide technical assistance to ensure that you are meeting the requirements for FEMA approval. Have any of your counties received technical assistance from TDEM or an audit of your current hazard mitigation plan?
William Thomas, Kerr County. I believe the process is once our hazard mitigation plan is completed, we submit it to TDEM. If there are any questions, they will submit it back. We answer those questions. We resubmit it again to TDEM, and upon their approval, they submit it to FEMA.
And were there any recommendations from TDEM on your plan?
Not to my knowledge, no, sir.
Not to your knowledge. Okay. So up to this date of this extraordinary weather event, your plan was in compliance according to TDEM and FEMA?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Louderback.
Thank you, Chairman. Sheriff Letha, at 2:53 in the morning, we knew that the River Inn had a problem, correct?
Yes, sir.
3:30, we knew that you had a family on the roof. 3:41, we knew that Schumacher Crossing, from a sergeant who lives there, understood the area, grew up there. So if we're going to have anybody make a decision right then, would it be a sergeant level or above law enforcement person to make the recommendation and make the call right then? We're saving minutes and seconds here. So would it be good for him to be able to have the authority to act in your stead, act in emergency management stead, in the time frame that it takes emergency management to get going, or for you to get up, or for them to be contacted wherever they are, so they can put a proper response in place? But it seems to me like we need an emergency response that is up to the task at the time it's going on.
Absolutely, sir, yes.
Thank you.
Chair calls, recognize Representative Darby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This line of questioning is very disturbing. To some of the comments, we've had little girls in bunk. We have people dying. And yet we've got officials that are charged with the responsibility for their protection, that are in their beds, they're sick, they're waiting for somebody else. I've not to this time heard about the establishment of a unified command center to handle these responses. But yet I'm more disturbed with your comments, Mr. Thomas. As a river authority charged with not only educating people, but exercising conservation measures, but you're also charged with responsibility of gauging that river and letting people know about the dangers. In the comments last week and testimony from your authority to our committee, it was clearly evident that in 2015 and later in 2023, it was recognized through studies that you paid for that there was a need for an early warning system. In your words, an alert system would have saved lives. And yet, you didn't do anything about it. You waited to receive grant money from some third-party source when you had the funds available in your budget that you collect property taxes for to protect the citizens of Kerr County. You had money in your budget to fund an alert system, but yet you chose not to. Would you care to elaborate on that for the benefit of this committee, on your reasoning for that? And ultimately, the funds that were in your reserve account, did you return those through property tax reductions? You chose that path?
Bill Rector,
Speak into the microphone. Speak into the microphone. We need to hear your response.
I think, is it working?
I can hear you now.
Thank you. Obviously, we have been frustrated over the years trying to institute flood control, trying to institute a system where that we can better inform our emergency managers of situations. We grew frustrated to the point where we said, we're going to do it ourselves. We're going to just take the bull by the horn. We're going to create our own system, and we're not going to ask for additional funds. That was out of frustration. We had tried since 2016, when I came on this board, to create a flood warning system in Kerr County repeatedly, year after year after year, working with various agencies, trying to work with them to obtain fundings, and finally we got to the point where we just need to do this. It is urgently needed, and we are going to do it, and that's what we did in 2023.
What did you do in 23? Did you establish an early flood warning system?
We began looking at putting this as a separate priority, dedicating funds to it, and we followed that with finding people to talk with us on what needed and what could be done, what was technically now available. We had a hydrologist talk to us in 2024 of September, and we heard him. We heard what he had to say, what could be offered to our county, and we moved immediately in our next board meeting to moving forward with that project. And we issued, at the next meeting, January of 2025, we issued proposals, or requested for proposals for this system. And then by by June 4th, we had actually hired a contractor, signed a contract to begin creating a system with our own money that would support flood warning in Kerr County.
I think your executive director last week had indicated that the board decided in 23 not to move forward because they could not achieve a grant request and have your money, the board's money, needed to have matching grants for outside money through a grant system from the state or somebody else. So I guess the concern I have is that you had the resources, you had the data, you had the studies that said this early warning system is a critical factor in the protection of lives, and yet you continued since 2016. I think you came on board in 16.
Yes, sir.
You continued to look down the road, if you will, and not really address the concern that your data showed. So that's particularly disturbing to me, to think about folks asleep in their cabins that could have been warned. I'm not saying that they might necessarily have saved their life, but certainly we have to ask the tough questions. The folks on this panel are charged with responsibility of protecting people, and we want to make sure that there's no impediment, if you will, to that protection by some sort of procedural mess or unconcern. In fact, let me ask, where is and who is Jeremy Hughes?
Dalton Rice, City Manager, City of Kerrville. So Jeremy Hughes had put in his retirement paperwork July 2nd prior to the event after serving over 2 decades. And so he retired, I think, on the 11th, I believe.
So he's the emergency management coordinator for Kerrville?
Kerrville, yes, sir. So that position is a training battalion chief and with a separate function of emergency management coordinator.
I think one of the problems that this process is showing is we have a lot of folks who have have titles, but when the time came to act, they did not do so in a timely fashion. Mr. Thomas, the River Authority, we're going to have to take a look at your role and your responsibility to protect the lives and property of folks along this river basin.
Mr. Darby,
We would appreciate that.
just for the record, you're addressing Mr. Rector, and you said Mr. Thomas. I just want the record to reflect who you're questioning.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Rector, I'm sorry.
No problem.
I had Bill here, but I'm sorry. But you know who I'm talking about. Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rector, I've got a couple questions for you. I believe there's eight flood gauges that report to the National Weather Service. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And that's the only data. I mean, it's not a warning system. It's just a data collection, correct?
We are in the business of collecting data.
Right. And so with that data goes to National Weather Service. Do you make an effort, or is there a protocol in place to share any of that data with either the city of Kerrville as emergency management director or with your county judge?
The Weather Service makes that data available to all government agencies.
Right, but it comes to you. It comes to the River Authority too, right?
No, we see it at the same time it's released to the other agencies. We do not monitor those gauges. All that data goes to the USGS, and that goes to the Weather Service. When that data is released, we get it at the same time the Sheriff's Department does, emergency managers do.
I see. So
even though we pay for the gauges, we do not.
So you pay for the gauges, but you don't get a heads up on what the gauge told you?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And you pay for those gauges out of property taxes, is that correct?
Yes, sir, for 36 years.
Are all river authorities, do all river authorities have the ability to levy property taxes? Do you know?
I don't know that answer to that, sir.
I don't think they do. In fact, I think there's only 2 that levy property taxes. Is your board elected?
No, sir. It is appointed by the governor.
You're appointed by the governor. So do you report to the governor what
Yes,
you find, to the governor's office?
Yes,
rather?
sir.
But you're not accountable to the voters of Kirk County, even though you're taxing them.
We are accountable to the voters of Kirk County because they pay taxes that support us, but
But they couldn't unelect you and take you off the board if they didn't think you were doing a good job.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
I've got a couple for Dr. Rector, and then I've got a couple for city, both Kerr and the others. First of all, on your financials, for 24, under surplus funding, it's showing up on your income. I guess you spent $515,000 out of surplus in 24. 25, you budgeted another $589 out of surplus. You had about 3.3 or 0.4. Is that related to this dashboard project, or what are those funds going to?
We had several projects that we were funding at that time. Was a riparian area that was going to be
Let me
used.
back up. Was any of that related to additional gauges or flood monitoring?
No, sir.
Okay. And I understood that the dashboard, and I understand the need for consolidation. I would just argue you are not the best place to consolidate it. What it appears to me is there's a large river authority that has a fabulous consolidation of data that is accessed by portal for anybody that chooses to, but they're 100 million plus enterprise.
Yes, sir.
So for an entity to take on a dashboard that's, quote, going to be a shared resource, when you don't even have a number of gauges underneath the dashboard to actually track the data you're trying to track, does not make sense. So you dedicated $1.5 million to a dashboard to consolidate existing gauges. Does that include any more gauges?
Yes, sir.
It does. How many gauges?
Our firm, Kisters North America, is working on a map for those gauges. Obviously, one of the problems that we have, we don't have a flood until it rains. And so we need gauges in West Kirk County, rain gauges in West Kirk County. And those need to be automatically triggered. When you get a certain amount of rain, that data needs to go to our emergency managers to say, hey, something's going on up here. And we have always just supplied in the past data to the National Weather Service. What we're doing now is we're changing our scope. we are going to create a system within Kirk County that supplies data for our emergency managers in Kirk County so that they will be knowing what's going on locally on the ground here.
To be clear, though, you are adding additional flood control monitoring systems in that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, I don't care which one, Kerr or, Kerr or, I'm looking down here, Kendall, either one can operate, not Kendall, Kerr County, Kerr City. I'm going to hit you with about 4 or 5 things. I hope they're pretty short answers. Sheriff, number one. I'm sorry. Let me do Sheriff first. What is the acronym for the radio towers that you're deploying for new operability?
Gators.
No, that's the radio. What's the towers? You had an LTR or something? You had an acronym for the tower that y'all deploy to get better radio reception.
Oh, LCRA?
Yeah, that's right. So are they of a high, and are they permanent? When you put those in, are they permanent?
Yes, sir.
Are they of a height that could accommodate additional cell service vendors?
I would think that's very possible, sir.
And so I would tell both Kerr County and Kerr City, look in your current inventory of tower structure and ask your vendor network, for those that did such a yeoman's job during the emergency, that they might be willing to come on permanent. And I would also caution you this. Do not hold them hostage for fees that are exorbitant. The cost of a tower, the large part of the cost of the tower is land acquisition and leasing for space.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're sitting on government-owned space today, it only makes sense you reach out to those and say, please come on board. Because this community, this area needs bandwidth if we're going to put all of our eggs in one basket on a bandwidth line. So I'd tell both of you, Mayor and County Commissioner, and I don't have the Mayor here, well, I do, to go through your inventory and find out what works, and do not go back and hold them hostage. There's a fair market value to fees, but I would argue the safety of your community is worth gouging somebody that's trying to offer something that's essential service today. So that's the first thing. And it don't have to be LTRS. It could be a water tower for all I care.
Yes, sir.
But take an inventory and look at that and pursue that with a vengeance.
Yes, sir.
You can have service by the year end and won't be relying on boosters in the next flood. Secondly, this dual EMC deal for small counties and cities. My large ones, I get it. Lubbock's a split. But I want to tell you, in operation, you'll never know their city and county. They dovetail. My basic understanding is this one really didn't get together until Kidd got here and kind of forced the issue to get them together. Partly because we had a retired in one the day before, and we had one sick, and we had a county judge that was out. So, number one, I think you're going to anticipate or should anticipate a consolidation at a certain level of one, for many reasons. One, I don't think the expertise needed to do this properly exists in a small community. So you're running stretched on resources to begin with from a personnel perspective. Two, I want my TDM director not to have to guess which one he should talk to. So just from an organization and coordination, unless you can give me good reasons between now and the report and Bill that it shouldn't be that way, expect a consolidation. So here's the one that we haven't talked about much, and it's going to step on all kinds of toes, politically and otherwise. We're talking about what you do when the flood's coming and when it gets here. The question I have for y'all as a city and county, is there appropriate higher ground space given the time to evacuate people that are sitting in the 500 floodplain? Is there area you can get people to in this area if you have time to get them there?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So here's what all the data and monitoring is good, but you know what that's doing? It's squeezing it down to the very last second before we disrupt somebody's world. And that's a convenience or an inconvenience I'm willing to go to now. So going forward, under the Health and Human Services Codes, I believe it is, safety codes, that's where a lot of the camps are regulated. And what I've learned to find out is there's all kinds of reasons this shouldn't have happened at some level, but we get waivers. They ask for a waiver and they get a waiver. So guess what? An action plan at a flood warning level. Number 2, not the last one in line where it's already too late. But number 2, in a flood-prone area, when you're responsible for the lives of people that paid to be there, has to be evacuate to higher ground. Shelter in higher ground. And we would have had 3 hours if that had been a coordinated place to go and trained and taught. They could have been on higher ground. But what we don't want to do as a community is disrupt the community on a flood warning. Y'all don't get that luxury anymore if you're living on the river. So those are some things that I'm chewing through here, because if we can talk all day about data reporting, our science is pretty good, but we're never going to be able to predict exactly where Mother Nature's going to drop one of those. So all of these folks out here that intentionally, I didn't want them here today, but everything in your world's going to change a little bit, because in the next flood warning, if you're in a 500 plane, and most of those places were, there's the 100 and the 5, if you're in the 100, but if you're that close to the river, you're going to higher ground at flood warning level. That's the only way with some certainty you can predict no matter what the river does. And it would have worked in this one had those people went to higher places. The people that got to higher ground, some of the kids in Mystic actually got to a higher ground on their own accord. That's what we got to start talking about, and stop wobbling around some of these things that we let people do because it's an inconvenience. Judge?
That's not difficult to do.
Do what?
That's not difficult to do.
Well,
to adopt a policy on the NWS when they have the flood warning.
It's an action plan at this level.
Well, let me just say this. It's not a problem as for emergency management to put out shelter on higher ground, and you know, we can do that. On flood warnings, when it says 1 to 3 inches, I'm telling you, some of those people won't move.
I'll tell you this, if I'm responsible, if it's my camp and I've charged for that bed, and those kids have been entrusted with under me, it's not an option. Now, if I'm a private, pulled up, put up a tent and sit on the river, so be it. If I'm in the RV camp and I go to RVs and say it's time to shelter higher place, and one of them says you ain't getting me out of here, check the box, you talk to him, and when he's found down the road, you can go. But we've got a way to stop this, and what you just said is a truth, but sad. It's not that hard to do.
No, it's not. And it's just like Chief Kidd said, we can do better.
Well,
we can do better on this.
I would argue, and I haven't been through all the waiver processes, but I would tell you a lot of this stuff was probably wavered off over the years because it was an inconvenience. And that's got to stop. One final question. I think if I heard it correct, there was not a required actual training scheduled at least once a year. I know there was tabletops. Tell me if I'm wrong, Mr. Thomas. Y'all do an actual test once a year, or you just do tabletops and exercises?
William Thomas, Kerr County. We do tabletops and exercises.
You actually do a physical all hands on deck with city and with county?
We have not done a full-scale evacuation exercise, no, sir.
So going forward, Senate Bill 6 had some requirements. It ended up in a report. I don't know how you guys can be good at what you do if you've never practiced what you're supposed to.
I agree.
And I think coordinated, not 2 units. You need 1 leader, which reminds me you actually need 2, or maybe 3 in this case, but 2 of your leaders weren't available. So a whole lot of world changing in this stuff for you and everybody that's in your current position. But we really just got to be smarter and willing to pull the trigger I'm going to give you, I think this committee will hopefully approve it. It's not miss me. At flood warning, if you live on this river, you're going to be moved to higher ground. It just makes sense to me. So with that, Mr. Chair, I think I did have one sneak in. Actually, I had two. Did you have any more?
No, I think the House is going to be
Senator
quiet for a minute.
Schwartner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on follow-up of your question, Judge Kelly, you're indicating in your testimony that there was not much in the way of an alert of the severity of the flooding. I understand, at least from prior testimony in Austin, that the National Weather Service issued not only a flash flood warning on top of the flash flood watch, but subsequently had an actual flash flood emergency sent out.
Yes,
and
sir.
of course, you being the EDC or EMC or EMD, and then of course the EMC,
Right.
those are automatically sent by text and by email to the address of record that you supply to the State of Texas State Operations Center. But you also indicated that you woke up or were awoken from texts or calls from Kidd, Letha, and Rice. Did those texts indicate the flash flood emergency occurring, and at what time?
I don't know if that technical information was in there, but we definitely knew we were in trouble.
One more time, sir.
I don't know what the exact
Time frame?
no, what was exactly said, but what the import was that we had a major problem in Kerr County, and I needed to address it.
On those texts?
Yes.
That when you looked at them, when you woke up at what time again?
5-ish.
5-ish. And what did you do at that time?
I got my dogs and packed up and called the emergency management coordinator. We went over protocols and drove back to town.
You drove back here. Did you
Drove
come to
straight
the EOC that day of July 4th?
After I signed the declaration, disaster declaration at the sheriff's office, we went over to the EOC.
On the July 4th?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And were you at the press conference that night with the governor?
Yes.
You were at the press conference the night of July 4th with the governor of Texas here?
I'm not sure.
And again, were you in
The days bleed together. I have been in press conferences with the governor. You're asking me which day.
This would be the day of the flood. Were you in the press conference with the governor?
I do not know. I can find out.
I'm going to ask you this one more time. Were you actually in the Emergency Operations Center the day of July 4th at all?
Yes, sir.
You were?
Yes, sir. And what happened was, after we finished up the briefings and everything, I had still not seen my wife. And so I went to West Kerr County to make sure she was okay. And then I came back for the press conference with the governor, I believe. That can be verified. But I think I was back for that.
Okay.
Senator Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Probably don't need an answer to this, but a comment. Dr. Richter. So residents of Kerr County are paying taxes for the Upper Guadalupe River Authority to be in the business of collecting data. You said we're in the business of collecting data. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right, that's correct was his answer. You might pull that mic up, sir.
Yes, sir.
And the Upper Guadalupe River Authority has been established since 1939. There have been some floods. That's 86 years. And the board, you representing the board, are just now deciding and acting on the need to have gauges?
Those gauges were put in 36 years ago, I believe.
Okay, so we have no alarms, though. It's just gauges to collect information for the National Weather Service?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So I would say that you should be in the business of protecting people from the things that are going on in the river. I don't see how the Upper Guadalupe River Authority helped in any way in this flood. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Gocorse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To all of you, we're hearing you, and I know that it was like Senator Flores, you said, the monster in the middle of the night, a historic flood, and we're going to get better from all of this. I drove down with Senators Blanco and Menendez this morning to Hunt and Ingram, and we saw the devastation. We saw some of the debris in the top of the trees, those huge cypress. This was something of a magnitude that, as Sheriff, you generationally, having been here, we've never seen before. So specifically, I want to ask a couple of questions. Mr. Rice, you had some recommendations. I think that Representative Moody asked you if we could get those in writing. I was writing as quickly as I can, but my shorthand's not great. So can you get those to us?
Dalton Rice, City Manager. Yes, ma'am, we will have all that information to you all.
Thank you. And Sheriff, your timeline is very important because we're comparing those to what we heard in Austin. So if you could get that to us as well.
Absolutely.
I want to go to your question, your comments in your writing. You said the water came too fast, and that leads me to the importance of educating our seasonal visitors and the youth camp operators about the importance of flash flood monitoring and knowing the evacuation plans. I'm going to ask a question on the evacuation plans. Did y'all know that the camps had those, or the RV parks had those? Do those exist, and did anyone know that they existed?
I'm going to refer that to our EMC who works with them on a regular basis with the camps, our emergency management coordinator.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. William Thomas, Kirk County. We have 19 camps, summer camps here in Kirk County. I think I have emergency management plans for, they've been submitted by the camps, probably 6 of the camps.
Let me clarify that for myself. 6 of 19 camps had emergency plans that you had access to.
That have been submitted to me, yes, ma'am.
I'm going to ask this as a question, whether it is through statute, state statute, that we give you the ability. Do you think that every camp, especially those in a 100-year floodplain or a 500-year floodplain, should have evacuation plans, including those that are to shelter in place and get to higher ground? Yes, or, and I mean, I'm a long 6th-generation Texan. I've come to your beautiful county many times. It's been a while since I've driven out to Hunt. We see the low water crossing. With all of your timelines and comparing them, it was moved to higher ground. Should we have those plans? Should they know better? And should we require that?
Yes, ma'am. I believe if we're going to make school safety rules and regulations for the schools to have safety plans, I think we need to do it for camps as well.
Obviously, one camp suffered more than others, and we were able to get, there was something that went very wrong, and then there was an area that they were able to evacuate. And I know that there are a lot of parents with lots of questions. As we move forward, we'll hear from some of those. Representative Johnson, I too represent families that have lost their child or family members. I want to ask the county judge from Kendall County, Judge Stolarczyk. Did y'all lose any lives in Kendall County?
Shane Stolarczyk, Kendall County.
Pardon
no,
me?
Shane Stolarczyk, Kendall County. No, ma'am, we lost 0 Kendall County residents.
I went through your testimony, and you gave a pretty good timeline of how y'all reacted. It seems like y'all were reacting very expeditiously. In part, I know that the flood was your downriver. Did you think that you had more warnings from Kirk County that it was coming your way, or did y'all react just on the warnings from NOAA and from other warning systems?
I would argue that we reacted on both based on our conversations and those warnings, but also based on history. We know there's generally about 6 to 8 hours of a lag between when floodwaters come from upstream by the time they hit Comfort. So we know there was a window built in, but it actually hit us a little faster than we anticipated.
Then I want to ask this. You gave some recommendations. I'd like to get that in writing as well. But some of the things that you did, you have no manufacturing housing in the floodplain. Is that correct? You do that? You all have asked for that to happen?
Correct. No permanent like rental properties, but I believe you can keep them there for up to 90 days, like for park or to park and camp. But I'd have to recheck our rules for the exact specifications for that.
In your testimony, you had some bond issuance for $20 million of what y'all were doing with mitigation space, green space. If you could get that to us, I'd really appreciate that very much on the proactive things you did pre this disaster.
Correct. The bond initiative is a very unique one. We're a very conservative county, like 80% Republican, but that bond passed like by 66%. And so our residents willingly raised taxes to go out so we could purchase large tracts of land to, in areas where we know there's risk for floods, where we want to preserve waterways, and also prevent certain kinds of development that could be problematic down the road. So it's our community is very invested in the well-being and welfare of our residents. So that was one of the very big accomplishments that we've done in the past couple of years.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Lieutenant Governor.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I say this with a heavy heart because none of us want to point fingers, but I was kind of in the middle of it on day one. And since day one, I've been to a number of the funerals. I went to the church and spoke to the families and gave the families my cell number a few days later and said, call me. I've gotten to know these people, and I think I have to make this point on behalf of them. Judge Kelly, I never saw you on day one. I came here from Austin. In this room, I talked to the sheriff multiple times, Sheriff. I talked to the mayor multiple times. We had a meeting when we got here. Governor Youngkin was here. I was here. The mayor was here. Everyone was here.
Then I wasn't. Then I wasn't.
And you were not. You were not. And I asked the question, where's the county judge? I have covered multiple emergencies in my 10 years as lieutenant governor. This is about as bad of a day as you can have, and I've had a lot of bad days because we didn't just lose people. We didn't know where people were. And you weren't here. I asked where you were for the press conference that night. You weren't here. Governor Youngkin and myself and the sheriff, you remember the sheriff, we very laborious, I can't say the word, a lot of labor intensive, went down the list of every camp, of the 15 camps, to find out who was accountable and who was counted for. And the only camp, and you know this, Mayor, you were there with us, we went down that list and we found that every camp had accounted for everyone except Mystic. You weren't in that meeting. I don't know where you were on day one on July 4th, but you should have been here. You should have been here directing that response. That's your responsibility. And Charles Swartner asked you the question. I want to set the record straight. I'm not pointing a finger. I'm not blaming you. I just want to set the record straight. Everyone was here that day working their ass off, and you were nowhere to be found.
All right.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These questions will be to the sheriff, Mr. Rice, and to Mr. Thomas. Do y'all have previous incident after action reviews?
We are going to do one after this, sir.
How about from the floods of old? Then we have an issue in like 87.
Dalton Rice, city manager. I don't know about the old ones, but anytime we do an incident or have an incident, we have an emergency action plan. an after-action review and corrective action plans.
Okay. But after action reviews from previous events, do y'all have?
I would have to find that out for you, sir. I don't know.
Okay. Could you look, and if so, could you provide it, sir?
William Thomas, Kirk County. I'm like Mr. Rice. I have not seen any after action for past
Great.
floods.
Thank you. Now, I know that Texas Department of Emergency Management basically started moving assets into Central Texas, or in a larger area, of course, not necessarily here in the county, on 2 July. Were y'all participatory in those coordinated meetings?
Dalton Rice, City Manager. No, we were not, but Kerrville is historically, regardless whether it's fire season, flood season, throughout the year, we're a heavy staging area for TDEM, and they're there constantly. So sometimes we know about it, sometimes we don't, and I don't think we knew about it until the morning of.
Till the morning of?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There's assets, and you didn't know of it till the morning of?
Correct. And I think on the timeline, we had, I think it was about 03:30, give or take.
Okay.
Our battalion chief that was on shift, he had notified STRAC or MedCom, which is kind of the communication point, and that was when they got in contact immediately with the boat teams that were local.
But there's not necessarily anything that requires you, once it's identified by TDM, for you to actually attend that meeting?
No, sir, I don't think
Those
so.
coordination meetings, and you know the ones I'm talking about in the morning and the evenings. Okay, all right. So in your observations, when you're doing rescue and as well as recovery, and of course, you know, you still have weather events that's happening, you have a lot of help from agencies and so forth like that. Is there something that you identified that, you know, for example, that maybe the state had provided that basically was not a help but a hindrance, like, for example, rescue boats going down, or not in a necessarily was able to meet what this particular mission called for water rescue? Anything in that example at all?
Dalton Rice, City Manager. No, can't think of any hindrances at all. Every state, local, federal resource has been amazing, and they've come in strength with the proper equipment, the proper training, and everything.
Okay, that's good to know. Was there any situation for which y'all repeatedly had folks doing rescue out there, but then you had to go and rescue them?
No, Sheriff Letha, Kirk County. What I can tell you with some of the volunteers, some of the issues we had, you know, we really appreciate them, but they were in the river searching, and we'd had some bad weather come back, and we had some trouble trying to get word to them to get them out. That I do know.
Thank you very much.
All right, members, I believe that's all we've got on this first panel. I do need Sheriff Letha, William Thomas, and Joe Herring